Hello everyone, welcome back to Hickory Lane Studios. Back in early winter, I made a model horse for a family friend, and she leases a horse at a thoroughbred rehoming center, and I was later commissioned to make 5 models for them. So in today's video, I'm going to be making Magic, the first of the commissioned horses. And this video is going to be slightly different than usual. I'm going to be walking you through the entire process, but this will be more in a tutorial style than my other process videos that I've made previously. So welcome to how to customize a model horse. But first, I think it's only fair that we meet Magic. Magic's story is quite a heart-wrenching one. She was abandoned in a field at a boarding barn, and nobody, including the barn owners, took care of her. She had abscesses in all 4 feet and couldn't walk to the water trough. She was starved and neglected at this place. Eventually, the Thoroughbred Rescue Center came to the aid of her and her field mates that were living there, and they were rescued. She was the worse off because she is so young, but she's doing fabulously now, and her under-saddle training will start when she's old enough. Since this horse has such a special story, I think it's only right that we get a base model that's properly fitting for her. So I purchased one at the local tack store near me that carries Collecta, and then I unbagged her.
This is not an unboxing. This is an unbagging.
So I ended up purchasing the Collecta Paint Horse Mare. I think she's really cute. Her tail is really nice. I'm not like the biggest fan of her coloring, but that's fine because we can change it. But because of that, I kind of overlooked her, but she's actually a lovely sculpture. So first I mix up my Apoxie Sculpt. I actually already cut the text off her belly, but I'll be filling that in now with the Apoxie. At first, I just use my fingers and I kind of smear it on. This step is optional. You don't have to do this, but I like to do it because real horses don't usually come with text on their stomachs, and I like to make my customs as realistic as possible. So I lay out as thin a sheet of epoxy as I possibly can, and I use my fingers as well as water and my silicone sculpting tools to get a really nice flat texture, and I try and blend it into the plastic as well as I can to reduce the amount of time I need to spend sanding later on. So this process isn't really difficult. It doesn't take very much time. Just getting it smooth is the most important thing. Add some details, and then I spray my model with primer. I also added some veins with some PBO porcelain liner. I didn't film this, but many other artists out there use this medium to add veins, so pretty much any video you come across will have that. Then it was time to color plan. This is Mikvi. He is a dark bay Icelandic, and this is Sleipnir. He is a kind of lighter bay Norwegian Dullahest. Not sure if I pronounced that right. I kind of want this horse to be in the middle of those two, so I mix up a base color according to that. The first example kind of had a light chestnutty color as the base, and the second example had a white as the base. So I'm kind of gonna go between those 2 colors to get the base I want for this particular model. So when that is done, I water out the paint quite a fair amount, and then I use a large flat brush to apply this. I find that using this brush increases the opacity of the paint and also makes the whole process take less time. The reason I water out the paint is so that you avoid brush strokes and that you get a nice even coat, but you build it up with multiple layers to ensure that you get full coverage on your model. So you can see here she's looking kind of streaky, but she's dry. And once the model is fully dry, I go on to the next layer. If you don't wait till the model is fully dry, you'll end up ruining the paint on the previous layer and you won't build up opacity and it'll take a lot more time. So just let the model sit for a while instead of rushing things and going ahead. Then I do another layer. You can still see some of that primer showing through. You want to make sure your horse is fully opaque before you start on the next layer. And then a final layer, you can see that the opacity is building, the color is building, and the model is starting to become one uniform color instead of streaky and brush strokey. Then I spray my model with this Winsor & Newton matte varnish, best sealant I've tried so far. Does a very nice job. The pastels stick to it well, and I haven't encountered any graininess issues using this sealant. So now I pull out my PanPastels and I'm going to mix up a custom mix of colors that tie well into the base color that we just painted the model. So I first start with a shade the same color as the base color of paint on the model, and then without spraying a layer of sealant in between, I add another darker layer on top of that, and I feel like that under layer helps prevent graininess and it helps build the color evenly with nice shading, and so it's a really helpful technique. Make sure that you wear a mask and gloves. You don't want to be touching the model during this phase. That can result in graininess, and a mask just to keep the dust out of your lungs. It's not great to breathe in. So as I said previously, I start off with my layer of pastel, the same color as the base coat on the horse, and then I can go in with darker pastel colors to start to build that color to the point I want it at. This horse didn't take me super long to complete. She took about 2 layers of pastel and like 3 or 4 layers of paint. Usually it does not go that quickly. My previous custom, I built him up from white and he took like 8 to 10 layers of pastel. So it really varies depending on the model that you are choosing and the color that you're choosing and the base color that you're choosing. So you can see I've darkened my pastel mix quite a lot here, and I'm adding that through the midsection and on the top line of the horse, as well as on the neck and on the face. And then I kind of keep the negative areas on the horse a bit of a lighter shade. So my secret with pastels that I'm going to say is that graininess, usually for me, occurs when I go from a warm color to a cool color or vice versa too quickly. So I made sure to keep my colors in the same kind of color scheme. I like to go from warm to cool and vice versa very gradually instead of very quickly all at once. So I made sure of this when creating my piece. Even though I wanted her to have some cooler aspects, I built that up slowly. So I then added black to the muzzle, around the eyes, on the legs, and anywhere else that there was exposed skin. I added some yellow in the negative areas, some lighter color in there, and I knew that that would become subtle when sprayed, as it always does. And then I put some black on the legs. Bay horses have black shading on their lower leg, so I made sure to replicate that. Another spray of sealant, and then I'm back with the second and final layer. It's the same technique of that lighter base color and then shading over top with darker and lighter colors in the negative and raised areas. see that's her body after the second layer of pastel. She's looking pretty nice. When darkening the legs, you don't want to have a super sharp contrast, so you want to fade it in using a kind of color that's in the middle of that black and that brown or whatever other color you're using. For buckskins or dun horses, they also have these black legs, so you want to kind of get a intermediate color to blend that into the brown at the top of the leg so that it looks natural. I wasn't entirely happy with her color, so I used some cooler, darker pigments on the crest of her neck and in her midsection. You can kind of see what I mean between warm and cool here. The cooler colors in the middle and the warmer colors are in the negative area and in the surrounding areas of the horse, but it creates a nice contrast and really helps give that shaded look. So then I go in with some lighter color in the negative areas. You can see I went pretty light, and also by her muzzle there, that's going to create a subtle shade. So it would be less subtle if you built it up from white, but I didn't feel like I needed to do that. This particular horse isn't super shaded. Then I gave her the final spray before the detailing phase. You can see she's looking really nice here. I'm really happy with her color so far. I think she's a lovely, rich, medium to dark bay color. Really happy with her. The detailing phase is quite a time-consuming process. It usually takes me about a day of really hard work for pretty much the entire day. But sometimes it can take more than a day. Sometimes it can take up to 3 or 4 just painting little details on your model. But this really brings the model to the next level. So I find it's a super helpful phase. I like to use tiny, tiny brushes and nail art brushes. I wear gloves and I mix up the paint. So first I'm going to start with some hair detailing on the stomach of the horse, and also in any areas where they're sculpted on hair or I see fit on the model. I find here I'm kind of highlighting and adding shadows to the wrinkles between her kind of armpit area. And so I find that in negative areas I add darker paint, and on the raised portions I add lighter paint, and that kind of really helps make those areas pop more. And this horse was painted on like every inch of her body. I tried to go crazy with the detailing phase. I added a lot of hair details, a lot of highlights and lowlights on her face especially, and on her legs and her stomach. I went crazy with detailing on her stomach. You can see here I'm highlighting her veins. This is kind of a tedious process. Got to be really careful about it. You are kind of using tiny amounts of paint on tiny brushes, and if you mess up, it looks really not very nice. Just highlighting all those little areas and adding hair details to the stomach. She looks a lot better. You can see after adding tiny little individual hairs, you can kind of see that detailing helps bring out the paint job and the shading that is already there. Then I start to paint her mane. I'm actually starting with a really light color, and then I went dark, and then I added more light color over top of the mane to kind of make it pop. I do the tail in the same way, adding light colors at the bottom and then darker colors, and then I go over the whole thing with some lighter color as well, and I dry brush it completely out of frame, focusing on my like decapitated horse standing over there. Don't mind that. You can see here I'm adding kind of those highlights and lowlights in the tail. They make a much bigger difference than you would think when you look at the model up close, and even from afar you can kind of see that two-toned thing going on. For all of my detailing, I'm using watered out acrylic paint, the same kind of paint I used for my base, and I will link all of these materials in the description. I use Liquitex heavy body acrylic though for this. I paint the hooves in a dark brownish gray color, mostly gray with a bit of brown. And then I do a lot of horizontal and vertical stripes with my small nail art brush, as well as adding some darker brown around the bottoms to kind of look muddy, dusty, dirty. Horse feet are like rarely ever clean and polished, and I wanted these horses to look like they're enjoying their kind of outdoor life. I like to keep in mind that not all realism is live show quality, and that I like to choose what's realistic over what looks quote-unquote correct or perfect, because I like to embody the true essence of the horse in my art. Look at these peak filming skills. My horse is like completely out of frame like the whole time. So for the white marking on her face, I didn't film me painting it on, but I like to use a stippling action with my brush instead of going all in completely one consecutive motion. I feel like it looks much more realistic and like hair detailed in if you kind of have that stippling action going on. So now I'm going to paint the eye. Here my filming skills got a bit better. First I fill in the sclera with white. It's the phase, they always look possessed. And then I add some dark brown over that part of the eye, leaving a tiny bit of white in the corner exposed, not too much. And then I go in with a darker brown and an even darker brown. And then I add the kind of goat-like pupil with black, see there? And it's important to remember that's always perpendicular to the ground. And I add a little flesh tone in the corner of the eye. I signed her feet with my pen, and I gave her the final spray of sealant, and then she is finished. Since you've made it so far in this video, I would like to say thank you all so much for watching this video until the end. I really enjoyed this project. She was a lot of fun to paint, and I hope to do many more projects like this. If if you did learn something or you were entertained, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to see more video projects like this. I have many more in store. So anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!